What's up, everybody? Welcome to Friday Night Frights with Kevin B. I'm your host, Kevin B. Tonight, we are watching one of my favorite fan films that they've got out there. It's Never Hike Alone from 2017. And I have a very special guest with us tonight who's going to watch the movie with us and shoot the breeze about the film. The director slash main actor, Vincent DeSanti. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name, Vincent.
Nope, perfect.
Okay, so I can hear you, and apparently you can hear me, so that's all good. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Tonight's show is the final show for this season, so I really wanted to go out with a bang. That's why I reached out to you. I knew it was last minute, and I don't know how or why. I won't question why. I'm just so grateful that I have been so lucky to get people at the very last minute. I didn't pull that with CJ Graham because I had to go through Ruby for him. But Mick Strawn from Nightmare on Elm Street, that franchise, I messaged him out of the blue and was like, "Hey Mick, I'm doing a thing on Nightmare on Elm Street. What are you doing this week?" He's like, "I'm in, man. I'm in." I'm like, "Awesome." So yeah, I was very very fortunate to have him. So again, I appreciate the last minute acceptance of the invite to the show.
Yeah, I mean, I had a busy week. We're gonna be delivering the Ghost in the Fog teaser trailer on Monday. So I've been waiting for shots to come in and sort of working here at home. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be around. I was thinking about going out tonight, and I was like, I don't have the energy. I'd rather sit in and watch a movie. And it's Halloween season. I almost forgot that I have movies to promote. So it's actually kind of nice to be like, you know what? Let's watch Never Hike Alone. Let's see if anybody wants to talk about it, ask questions. It's a good week to do it. We're still promoting for Never Hike Alone 2 and getting ready to shoot that next year. Got a lot of work to do, a lot of projects in the air. So I thought it'd be nice to sit down and watch a movie with somebody. It'd be pretty fun.
Well, I'm all about watching the films with my audience. My audience, they are usually pretty interactive, so we'll see what's going on. I'm only seeing 2 people on here right now, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Well, it's all good. I mean, either people will catch up. I mean, I just tweeted it out, so you never know. We're hitting people last minute, so who knows? And plus, it's Friday night, the weekend before Halloween. I know a lot of people are going out, probably having costume parties tonight and having a lot of fun. So if they don't watch it live, they can always watch it later on down the road. We can direct people towards it. Not a big deal. But obviously for the live experience, you get to ask questions and all that fun stuff.
Exactly.
So hopefully people jump in and we'll see what they have to say.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get the film started and see what happens. And I don't
basically using the same disclaimer for every single film. I just changed like 3 things now.
Right.
Hey. So well for the first one, and now I see it everywhere. Like everyone uses our disclaimer. I'm like, that's not foolproof, but if you're going to use it from somebody, I guess we're not too bad.
Hey, whatever works, whatever keeps. See, I keep getting kicked off of YouTube for. They keep saying that I'm copyright infringing, and it's like, I played Last House on the Left from '72, and that's. They wrongfully, I bitched about it last week too. They wrongfully kicked me off because that right there is public domain.
Yeah, because it's been 50, right? After 50 years, it's public domain.
It's that time of year again. And what better way to spend the summer months
fan
than
films
a
can
place where
be,
you can play,
learn,
and
they're
grow.
a big risk.
With plenty of activities to
I
get
thought I would have
around,
been shut
we
down a long time
guarantee you'll
ago.
have a fun
They just
and
recently
safe
shut down a
time
comic
here
book that
at
was
Camp
very
Crystal
promising
Lake,
called Jason
located in
Rises.
the Wessex
Pretty
County
upset
North.
about that.
Tonight's movie will
So, I mean, it looked like the best Friday the 13th comic book I've ever seen compared to everything else that's come out legitimately. I was sort of like, why would you stop this? This looks so good. Fans would love it. And so it's kind of sad that they had to do that. But fan films have gotten away with it. It's been a real experiment. We started very small and it's grown very large. But I wonder, since it sounds like Friday the 13th is going to get announced soon, how long it's going to be able to continue to go. And hopefully we'll be able to finish before they finally come after us or come after fan films in general.
I don't see. I don't know. You guys aren't making money off of them, though.
Still, I mean, it always comes down to the rights holders. So yeah, we're not making money, but we're still raising money. You know what I mean? And even though we're not making money, what's to stop someone else from making money? And how can you tell? And it's like, just because we're doing it the right way, and it doesn't mean that everyone who's ever going to do it the right way. There are people out there who have tried to rip people off. There are people who outright lie about what they can and can't do. A lot of people underestimate what it takes to make a film, why they're crowdfunding in the first place. It's a very muddy water, and it can get complicated real quick. And so if you don't know what you're doing, or if you have anyone who ruins it for the rest of it, it could be a big thing. Luckily, everyone has delivered on their promises for their MP3. No one's missed out on a ton of money. There's nobody complaining. So I think as long as nobody's complaining, we're all good. But you never know. Things change.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping. I hope that they don't go after the fan filmmakers, because look at the creativity that comes out of all of these. I mean, whether you like the films or you don't like the films, or you like the people involved or don't, whatever the case may be, it brings a different creativity to the whole franchise. Some are really good, some not so good.
I mean, it's always the effort that counts, at the end of the day. And, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons too, you're doing it because you want to add to the franchise. You want to, give the fans something that, the studios really aren't capable of, or really don't have a passion for, like fans do. This music video, we put this together in a weekend. We used some of the excess cash that we raised from the home video campaign to shoot this, to create more free. That's the cool thing about what we do is, the more we raise, the more we turn it into more projects. We're oh, now we can afford to do this, we can afford to do that. And I'm all about hype taco. And come up with stuff. And this was more a low budget approach. And then this helped us raise money for Never Hike in the Snow, which follows it. That's a high budget approach, and a different, appreciation for this was filmed. This was filmed in Flagstaff, Arizona. This is where we have 2 camps that we shoot at, actually 3 camps now. And so this is our secondary camp. And this is also where we filmed Never Hike in the Snow. So this was a great way for us to not only create something, which the can doing that was complete luck. We didn't aim for it to do that, but we caught it, so that was really awesome. We used this as a test production. We knew we could do this and do it well and make a good music video, but it was also showing us what was it like to shoot over here, use this camp, what do we have to look at. And a lot of the locations that you see in this film are used in Never Hike in the Snow, especially when we're in the camp and things like that. So this was our first foray into this, and then later on that winter, we shot in the snow.
I gotta say, I love what you did with that great big cabin. I don't want to spoil it.
That's not too much. I think the cabin you mean in Never Hike Alone, the big one with the
yeah.
That's a different camp. We just sort of marry the camps together. We try to pick a style, and then we sort of try to make it keep their way. But different challenges keep us filming in different places. I understand the struggle of the Friday the 13th filmmakers now, when they were going from location to location to location, trying to make it all look the same. It's not easy. Sometimes it's not always available. The camp that's a part of Never Hike Alone is really hard to get to now. And so shooting in some of the other camps that we've shot in, they're easier access and allow us to have quicker days. There's not 2 hours of load in and 2 hours of load out. It's literally load in, we're right there. We can work out of the vans. Makes it a lot easier on the crew, and it still looks good. But we will be returning to that camp for Never Hike Alone 2, because we want to tie 1 and 2 together very, very well.
Right.
And so we will be doing those things, but you'll see a little bit of everything. But the camp you'll actually see in Never Hike in the Snow, and the one you just saw in Disappear, has been leveled. It no longer exists. So you will not be seeing that camp in Never Hike Alone 2, but we don't really need it too much. We have the original camp, which we'll be using, and our another camp that appears in this film in some of the scenes. And you don't know. You never know which camp you're in. So that's sort of just the test to it.
What happened here?
Here we this is us shooting around, I want to say 5 o'clock in the morning. Shooting Never Hike in the Snow. We drove up to the mountains and there was no snow on the mountain. Literally all this snow came in this day. And this is actually going to be a couple of days that we shot this, because this part was actually shot on another day. But that's more minutia. That both weekends where we shot this film, like outdoors, it was weekends where it snowed. We got really lucky because we had a drought winter that year in California. So I got up with Cortland here, who's our lead actor, and I got up with my DP and our gaffer and our grip, and literally just ran out into the forest at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to get him running around. Got all those opening footage shots, took a break. The sun came out, melted a lot of the snow. We waited for the second storm to come in, which is this storm coming on top of this right now, where literally an hour before we shot this, it was sunshine and there was no snow on the ground. And so we were literally chasing this snow as we were shooting this scene. And as you watch the scene, you'll see the snow pile up more and more and more as it started to hit us harder and harder. And you see there's a little bit of bare ground in like a previous shot, and he steps in like 2 inches of snow. So you can see that like it was coming down hard and fast. And we had to shoot this entire sequence within the boundaries of this snowstorm, which made it very challenging. So luckily, like, it was all figured out. We knew what the shot list was. We had a stylized, thought of what we were going to do. We're shooting this scene on a jib with a rotating head, so we can fly it around and fly around Jason. And then we filmed the second half of this scene the following morning. So that way we could get sort of a clearer day to sort of do some of it, go here. So the snow tapers off, and then we can kind of get this final showdown between Cortland and Jason, which is a pretty cool way to open up a movie, in my opinion.
Now I'm confused. I thought that I downloaded Never Hike Alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the Ghost Cut. This is Disappeared, Never Hike in the Snow, and Never Hike Alone all in one fell swoop.
That's right. I had a brain fart. My bad.
That's what you're saying. Like before, you're like, "Oh, watch Snow." I'm like, "We're gonna watch it tonight."
Oh, okay. So yeah, I guess I got confused on what exactly I was downloading. But all right, that is just as cool.
Oh. Yeah, the Ghost Cut, what we're watching right now, is all three of our productions that we've done up to date. Shout out to Nora Hewitt and her wife Rachel for making this possible. Also, Cody Wilkins, who helped build the blood rigs for this. We have an amazing effects team. They do top-notch work, and very proud to call them wall stoppers for sure. Yeah, the Ghost Cut is all three films cut together with some bonus scenes and extra stuff added in. So like that opening, montage of the camp, which was originally from a trailer. We tacked that onto the front. Disappear has an additional voiceover by Tom Matthews, which is like one of my favorite things that we added to this. But if you go back and watch this on your own, that opening monologue wasn't in the original Disappear music video, and I think adds a lot of sort of context to what's going on in these films and how everything's going to tie together in the end. And so, now, and then also reminding people like what the actual order of the films, how it actually plays out. It isn't Never Hike Alone and then Never Hike in the Snow is a sequel. Never Hike in the Snow is a prequel. It sets up what happens in Never Hike Alone and Never Hike Alone 2. And we'll explain that more as we tell the story of Never Hike Alone 2. But this was supposed to be, flashing back to 2020 when we shot it, this was supposed to be a 4-part series, with Never Hike in the Snow being the first episode as a prologue and leaving an air of mystery behind of what was going to happen next. And then follow it up with 3 other episodes that got canceled because the pandemic kept us from being able to run a production. So we, put everything in the can for 3 years, waited, or 2 years really, and waited for the pandemic to sort of clear and things to become a little bit more affordable to shoot, ended up putting those 3 pieces that were originally 3 individual episodes back into the form of a feature film script in which they were originally created. So I originally took the feature script, split it up, added a prologue, and now all I did was just put those 3 pieces back together with some of the new ideas written in and expanded on the original script, which is what is Never Hike Alone 2 is going to be, which is a feature film. So in order, it would go, Disappear, Never Hike in the Snow, and then Never Hike Alone and Never Hike Alone 2 sort of like run at the same time and then intersect and then keep going where Never Hike Alone left off.
Right.
It will make more sense when people see it, but it's a fun ride, and it really focuses on Tom Matthews' character, who's going to show up here in a little bit. Tommy Jarvis coming back. But this episode really focuses on what is life like in Crystal Lake prior to Never Hike Alone. Because when we get to Never Hike Alone, we're going to get to a place where Jason has been missing for a long time. So how has Jason been able to stay within the shadows and not get into a big confrontation where he's taken down and buried again? How has he been able to stay hidden all these years? Never Hike in the Snow is sort of a story about that. The things that need to happen in order for this, for Jason to sort of get away with what he gets away with. Yes, he has Tommy hunting him, but he has a skeptical police department that is trying to keep their jobs, sort of like the mayor in Jaws. And so they don't want the J word to be said out loud. They don't want people running around in panic. And so you'll see Rick sort of making choices through this episode where he's just trying to play his cards close and see what's going on. And, without seeing Jason his entire life, because in part 6, Deputy Rick Colon did not see Jason. He got locked in the cell. Deep down, Rick believes that Tommy is the one who's been doing this the whole time. And so he's trying to catch him in the act. And sort of how we kind of leave it off and we pick up with that story and Never Hike Alone 2. But this is sort of the context of like what we're seeing here. Tommy believing that Jason is still out there, the police force not believing him, and him trying to get the message across. But in a way, it will backfire in a way that he didn't really intend. And we'll sort of get that when we get there in the film. But that's sort of what we're setting up here, is that here's this new police officer who's sort of new to Crystal Lake, figuring out the local lore, trying to figure out what's going on. Where is this kid? Why is my boss acting sketchy? And then his boss going out and sort of like hedging all of his bets and making sure that like he has all the information first before any action is taken. So obviously in the scene with the boy's mother, played by Anna Campbell, who's a wonderful actress I met on the set of Jason Rising, another Friday the 13th fan film. She plays Dr. Diana Hill, Mark's mother, and she plays an important role in Never Hike Alone too. So we're just setting up her character here and setting up her arc, and then we will pay it off in Never Hike Alone 2 with this. But she's a fantastic actress, as you can see here, and pairing her with Vinny in this scene. This is the type of stuff you don't usually see in Friday the 13th. It's a dramatic, well shot conversation scene that has flashbacks and is a little bit more intricate than your typical like kids just showing up and partying. So it's one of the things we like to do with the Friday the 13th lore, is actually put it into the context of films that we don't typically see Friday the 13th content in. This being like a legal drama or like a police cop drama. Here's a guy on a case trying to solve a crime, more of a Zodiac than a Friday the 13th. You know what I mean?
Right. So if you guys are just joining us, we're watching Never Hike Alone, the Ghost Cut. And our guest this evening is director, actor Vincent DeSanti.
I need you to pick me up at the hospital at 3.
And if you got little people, they probably shouldn't be watching this. Parental discretion is advised.
Just shield their eyes. Oh yeah, there's some brutal stuff coming up. Which is the other thing too. It's like we don't have high body counts in our films. We sort of like make it count. Put a lot of money into the effects. Put a lot of time into the effects, and sell it on emotion too. Like there's some emotional stuff coming up. And now we get to see a little bit behind, the door of what Vinny here has for his investigation, and the fact that he's just trying to figure it out. What was this kid doing? Where was he going? Because they obviously didn't find him in camp. You know what I mean? Or they didn't find him at all, but like it's very odd that this is going on. But where was he going?
Right.
Where was he messing around? This is sort of close to the camp, so Rick has his suspicions, but typically Jason doesn't come out this far. The kills don't happen out this far from camp, so this is sort of like this has got Rick's hairs on end of like what's going on here. We filmed this in Lake Arrowhead, California. Nice little town. Anna's friends actually own this house. It's an Airbnb that we're able to rent and shoot in at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah. So we kept this room kind of locked away as like the set, and we were sort of staying elsewhere. And this is sort of based on things that I would do. I would print out a map, write "Don't forget it" on the thing, and then leave it on my desk and forget it. So
Right.
You can see that like he had a map for like I don't know if so I guess looking back, I wish I would have got a tighter shot of that. Say like he found an aerial view of a broken down building. So you would get the sense that like he likes to go out, explore, and do photography. He wanted to go see what these buildings were. He saw them as he was researching the area. And, now Rick has found another loophole in his plan to sort of keep Camp Crystal Lake off the map, because it's literally still on the map. He may be able to take it off the address off the map, but you can still see the buildings, which also goes into how we found our camp for Never Hike Alone as well. Like I found the buildings in satellite maps. It wasn't listed on the map. So sort of we work the real life into it as well. No lie.
Anything else from me? Call me directly.
Well, I think deep down, Rick really believes he's doing everything he can. He knows there's nothing he can do for this woman, or else he, or else he would. But in his mind, him helping her is taking Tommy down. Well, I'm going to get Tommy. I'm going to make him pay for this. Now you've given me the ammunition that I need to go after my arch enemy.
Right.
And so shout out to Telluride Horror Show for always taking our project. We kind of snuck them in there because they're good friends to us.
Right.
Everyone always wonders, like, how did his mom get his password? It's like moms figure stuff out.
Right. Moms aren't dumb.
Moms aren't dumb. And I always had to think that like him and his mom don't have secrets. And so he allows her to go on the computer because he just looks at anything bad on his phone. And then also people ask like, well, why does he have a picture of himself on the computer? Well, that's supposed to be a birthday present that he's making for his mom. That he was like they took a picture of them. He's going to put it in a frame and he's going to give it to her. I'm not going to explain that in context in some weird dialogue scene, but like he's a photographer, like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, and even the picture's even called Mom, so you can see it's for her. And that transition is what I call my hereditary transition, my Charlie moment, where we get to see the dead head. We go from that smiling face to like where he is now. Again, amazing work here by Nora, who painted that up. Her and Rachel both made that head, which is really, really cool. It was my favorite prop on the film. It was very fun to have drag around the dead body. I think he's sort of like, one thing I like about this film from the filmmaking standpoint is the way that it tells the story. Like you see the story from the different perspectives and you sort of get to learn a little bit more about the character, already knowing their fate, but just sort of seeing how it unfolded and it coming to fruition in this way. I think that I think again, it's unique. It's like you've never seen a Friday like this before. We've seen plenty of like the straightforward ones. We wanted to do something that was like a little bit more clever. And here it's like one of the cardinal sins of like our Jason, our new Jason, is he doesn't want to be caught. He doesn't want to be seen. And here he accidentally gets himself caught on camera. Through the pixelation, you might not be able to see, but when you watch it on your screen at home,
that shot right there was awesome.
Yeah, that was one of the early, like I had that idea early on, because that's a picture from a long time ago. We ended up using it in the film, and I always thought, imagine if this was the last picture you ever took, and that thought turned into Never Hike in the Snow. Like, what if this was the last picture on someone's camera? What's their story?
Right.
Another cool part here, I think this is where we surprised a lot of people. This was like one of the last scenes written into the film. It was actually written into another film and another like idea a long time ago. And then I ended up being like, no, this is the perfect time for it. Like Jason feels like he let his mother down. He got caught on camera. He had to kill this kid. He's sort of feeling like iffy about it, even though he is a killing machine, but Jason doesn't normally kill kids. There's something in there that's still kind of ticking around. And so this scene's really supposed to show you that, like, remember, this whole series is about a mother and a son, and they were wronged, and they weren't bad people until bad things happened to them. And so these are their true faces. You know, she's not just a dead head. He's not just a mongoloid undead revenant. Like, this is who they were. They were happy before all of this happened. And now they're cursed to make people pay for it. Their revenge, her rage, the way that it sort of enveloped and took over this area, that they're stuck in this loop of violence. And this is their existence now. And whether he wants to do it or not, he's going to keep killing. He's going to keep coming back from the dead, and he's going to keep making people pay because he doesn't know anything else. And he doesn't know what his true meaning is. So there's sort of like all this stuff building up for us. But then at the same time, Tommy knows he's out there. And this time he's taking a kid. So Tommy's really pissed off, and he's motivated to go do something about it. And of course, Rick, with the deputy who's been pursuing Tommy ever since he, trashed his car, they knew where he was going. They know that he's going to go here and do this. So this is our third camp right here, actually. This is like another location in Big Bear, California, near our other camp.
You're making a big mistake, Sheriff. Don't act like you don't know what's going on. What are you talking about? You don't know? Why don't you ask Rick the Dick? That's enough. He's still out here, Sheriff. He's still out here. Get him out of here.
Yeah, and Never Hike Alone, when Tommy made his appearance, that floored me. I was like, oh my God. Never Hike Alone was, I think, like the second fan film that I had seen.
Mm-hmm.
And the story, it wasn't just, I didn't find it, I found it refreshing that it was actually telling a story, and it wasn't just kill, and see how many different ways you can kill somebody.
Yeah, that's
There's
usually
actually
the
context to it.
Yeah, I feel like that's the Friday the 13th. I'm making the Friday the 13th films I want to watch. I want to watch something that's sort of like trying to pay attention to its logic and continuity and story and character and things that, like, other better films, like, there are, the films out there that are like that, are just good cinema, that are dramas, things like that. Like Friday the 13th has a lot of things that can work well in those contexts. They're just never used that way because they always default to like kill, joke, and it sort of loses any seriousness. And I liked the films when they were getting a little bit more serious. I liked when it followed one character. I liked the continuation of story and things that connected. That stuff always intrigued me about the franchise. And what if it started to really connect? And what if you really started to care? So that's where a lot of my motivation comes from when I write these. Is I'm trying to write more traditional films for drama and thriller and horror that just happen to have the subject of Friday the 13th in them. Not trying to recreate a campy Friday the 13th film and jam in as many kills as I can do, because ultimately it just becomes like not so much a body count film, but it just becomes like a body count montage. A lot of scenes that don't really belong in the movie with characters that don't really belong in the movie, just getting killed for fun. And some people love that. And that's one section of Friday the 13th that you could say is a big part of its fan base. But this is the thing you don't usually get. Like, everybody does that, but no one is taking this and like making story, like really building up. Like, this is one of my favorite sequences that we've ever done. Like, this is sort of like everything I learned on Never Hike Alone went into building this sequence of building like a scary walk through the camp, with that first person perspective, now changing the perspective from a GoPro to a body camera, discovering Easter eggs along the way that tell us a little bit more of the context of like where things came from, seeing that the ghost hawk is actually something that's in Camp Crystal Lake and been there for a long time. It's not, we're setting up clues as to, a larger narrative that if we had all the money in the world, we'd be able to put together like an 8-part, like telling of all the Friday the 13th through this lens, which I think would be really great. I don't know if I'll ever get to do it. I probably won't be able to. I may be able to share the stories along the way. But, you know, after Never Hike Alone 2, making anything else after that's going to be really, really challenging. But yeah, I mean, in that one sequence, I think we went through 3 different camps and you don't even realize it.
No,
different
I
buildings.
wouldn't know.
Yeah, so you're going through different buildings and other parts, and we're all marrying them all together to build one massive camp, one massive set that feels like a Hollywood set. I'm really going to miss this camp, though. I really think this camp had a lot of character. It was shut down in the mid-90s, and I love that sign, and you know, just this whole porch. Like some of our there's some really good shots over here, and I just really like shooting in this area. I'm sorely going to miss it. It was really easy to get access to. You literally pulled up right off the road.
Give the little guy a hug for me. Love you.
And this is like always the famous last words. I'll be home in a minute.
Yeah, hold on. I'll be right there. You wait.
And some people think that he's talking to his wife there. He's just doing talk to text. We tried to not do bubble pop-ups and other things like that get kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
We wanted to keep it natural. The people are interacting with their phones, and just by the way they're interacting with them, the audience will pick up on what they're doing. Sometimes people get confused. That's fine. I know people are looking at their phones while they're probably watching this. But this is definitely not the scene to do that for. I'll try not to talk through it too much. But this was a later addition to the film too. This wasn't originally in the film. We added this after we raised more than our original amount. So I think when we raised $75,000, we wrote this scene in, which was there's a lot of effects here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, but yeah, I'll talk about it afterwards. We'll sit through this one, but this is a good one. This is one of my favorites.
So hopefully, everybody out there watching, you can hear everything good, and the audio for the film is at a good level, and our audio is a good level. Not seeing too many comments being made other than Amelia Catawampus.
Like the womp in there. Yeah, so here we are. We actually have a police officer trying to arrest Jason Voorhees. So I always thought that was such a great subject for a scene. Let's see a cop try to just arrest Jason. What would happen? And Jason's still in his trance. You know, the cop solves the crime. Tommy fighting enough makes this guy care enough to go look, which inadvertently screws him. The wind actually blew out the candles in that shot.
That was perfect timing.
That actually happened.
It's intense. I loved this scene. I laughed when he was like, "Put your hands up." I'm like, yeah, okay. Oh. Bye now.
Yeah. All right. No more. Sorry. Yeah. And so we got a lot of people mad at us right here. This was the end of Never Hike in the Snow after waiting all year to put it together, and not having films to follow it up, and sort of doing that. We ended up putting this, we recorded this as well, so a little follow-up.
After Wessex County Sheriff's Deputy Alan
Tracy Savage from Friday the 13th Part 3.
We're going to go live right now to a press conference.
Boy, she's aged well.
I got to be in 13 Fanboy with her, Judy Aronson, and Dee Wallace and Deb Voorhees and the whole crew.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've been making some appearances in other films too.
I have been able to work with a lot of great filmmakers around the country and different things. Jason Rising, 13 Fanboy. I was in a couple of Michael Myers shorts. It's been a lot of fun.
I've had a couple of I did Jason Rising last season. I believe I had I've interviewed so many people. I'm having a hard time remembering names. But I believe it was the director from that film. He was on the show.
and
Yeah, James Sweet, he's a great guy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, James is great people.
So yeah, I really am a big fan of not just Friday the 13th, but horror movies in general.
Stay tuned.
But my most,
very latest from
you could ask my wife, she'll tell you, I watched every Friday the 13th film so many times, I could probably recite every line from every film ever made.
Yeah, right. I did that for a long time. I just watched the films nonstop for so long. I was so intrigued just by the way that they came together that like after a while I started to realize that there was supposed to be an order and that it was supposed to be put together. And I was like, how does this all work? Like, how did it happen this way? And this was like, we basically made the ghost cut for this reason, to be like, this was 3 months prior to Never Hike Alone. So you can imagine that like this kid goes missing. There's a big uproar, and then things die down again. And life goes back to normal in Crystal Lake. And this would have continued. Life like this would have continued if not for this gentleman driving up in this Bronco right here. Kyle MacLeod is the Luke Skywalker, the changing archetype character that's going to change everyone's lives forever, because he's going to do something that no one else has ever done in the 20-year span that Jason has returned to Crystal Lake from Manhattan. And Tommy's been looking for him. And that's, we'll see how he does it. But he's, he has to escape Jason Voorhees. And that's sort of what Never Hike Alone was about for me. It was like, what would it take for someone to survive a night in the woods with Jason Voorhees? And I can tell you very early on, every single script that we wrote, he did not make. So he's very lucky for producers and being a charming individual that, and he really has, he has Tom Matthews to thank, really, because we had to rewrite the scene at the end. I'll tell you what the original ending was at the end of the film.
Okay.
But this was, going back to this was such a labor of love. Starting with, consumer products, consumer drone to shoot this, consumer cameras to shoot a lot of the opening sequences here, until we were, gifted with the presence of a man by the name of Evan Butka, who came on and became a camera operator on this film. He's the DP for Never Hike in the Snow, the DP for Never Hike Alone 2. Amazing director of photography. He has his own camera, and we were able to take it from shooting on a Sony, DSLR, or actually a mirrorless cam, the A7S II, and move to a Red Epic. It really helped elevate the film. Same thing with another camera operator, Ben Meredith. He brought his Panasonic Vericam, which a lot of our night scenes were filmed with. Those of you who are film buffs, the Panasonic Vericam has a very high ISO to allow us to shoot at night and capture a lot of light. So it has like a dual ISO of I think 25,000 or something like that. So camera nerds will know what I'm talking about. But we basically bounced between those two cameras, and a lot of the opening, like this scene and the scenes that follow it, were shot with our Sony AS7 II. So it's a mixture of a lot of things, and a GoPro, and a couple other cameras along the way too.
Yeah, I loved how this one was filmed, because it was, once he stopped yapping and got out of the Jeep, it was all nonstop movement from there. And it was like, holy.
Yeah, this is very much inspired by 127 Hours. It's inspired by The Martian. So this scene specifically is inspired by The Fastest Man in the World speech by Matt Damon in The Martian, where he says, I'm about to become the fastest man in space. And you watch that scene, and he has his camera that he's talking into, and there's cameras covering him from a third-person perspective. And I thought, hey, if we're going to do a found footage Friday the 13th, that's the way to do found footage Friday the 13th. Use found footage when it can be useful, and then when it's not, put it away, and let's go do some camera work like this. I wanted this to feel like a skate video, heavy punk music, lots of cuts, lots of stunts, moving fast, camera's always moving, he's always doing something, quick cuts, something to bring the energy to say that this guy is athletic, this guy is formidable, he's got a lot of stamina, and he's funny and he's entertaining, and we want to hang out with him. His channel's fun and he's fun. He's not your typical YouTuber. He's actually got a personality. So we really sort of like use these scenes to work with Andrew to sort of build a character, and then always weave him into these moments where we can have our camera comes back out. From a technical standpoint, you watch him, he puts the camera away, we go to the third person perspective. We're watching him in third person perspective. He's going to reach for his camera, and that motivates us to go back to the camera. And so that sort of is the formula of how to do these films. And it just sort of became like, learning an instrument or learning a certain style of music. You know what the parts were, and you know how to like lead into each one. And like the more we did it, the better we got at making it feel seamless. And it all came down to this guy right here, Andrew Lady. Happy birthday to him tomorrow.
Yes, happy birthday, Andrew.
And my friendship with him, getting to know him, even before this, and then during this, we became very close, obviously, because we spent a lot of intimate time together, working on scenes and living in cabins and staying out in the woods all hours of the night and working on the character. And, a lot of this is just like amplified Andrew. I could say that. Like, there's a lot in common between Kyle and Andrew and who they were. That's the way I sort of wrote it around who he is. And to allow his like natural charisma and comedy just sort of come out. And, he just, all this stuff, he really just sells it. And by the time we get into the Jason stuff in this film, hopefully you love him by then. And even without Jason, he's carrying this film. I mean, people don't give him enough credit for how much he carries this film and allows us to play Jason right. Instead of like doing the typical sort of fan film thing that you would see a lot of old fan films, and it's even in the new fan films, everyone wants to get to Jason. Jason's going to be in every scene. It's all about this. And it was this about like the absence of Jason and then having him show up when he's truly needed and introducing him in a way that felt natural and not just all of a sudden him appearing, but as we watch him go on his journey there. A lot of people think Jason they're attacking Jason in this scene, the coyotes, which I've adopted after the fact. They're actually attacking a deer, but they could say that like Jason was stalking around and they were sort of keeping him in his area. I have a feeling that like the forest has a system for keeping Jason in check because he's a natural part of the forest, and that the animals sort of like, he kind of like freaks out the animals, and him freaking out the animals sort of freaks him out and sends him back to where he's from. He tries not to wander too far. There's still sort of that nature to him. So that's the way I see the dynamic between Jason. We just never really got to express that on camera. The original film had Jason fighting coyotes and wolves in a scene. I'll talk about that later.
That's actually not really that bad an idea. It would kind of give people an idea as to how he has survived out in the woods all this time. I mean,
and like
he's still alive.
Yeah. Like the old video games used to get attacked by ravens and wolves. You're like never in a Friday the 13th film, but it's like, you know what? Like he's out there in nature. How does nature react to Jason? Like, is he the train's not looking too friendly. Is he an alpha predator? I mean, he doesn't really like need to eat them anymore because he's undead. He doesn't eat. But there's just I always found that like, especially in film or just like anything we've seen in sort of any type of narrative atmosphere, animals are very skittish around supernatural things. They get on edge. They don't like it. It's unnatural. And so they are fearful and attack and sort of become almost the protectors of people in a lot of films. So I sort of like, that's how I sort of see it. It was something I wanted to weave into this. I just didn't have the money and the time to really set it up. And we just sort of played with it. Like that scene was supposed to set up another scene. It just ended up working out to say like, even beyond Jason, the woods is still dangerous. Those coyotes are out there. You know what I mean? When he's running around later on in the film, when he's all injured and stuff, like he could get attacked by animals. You know what I mean? A wolf could come up and attack him. So he doesn't just have Jason to worry about. He's got the forest as well. This scene was, this whole set was such a hard place to get to. It was like a 20-minute hike. straight up into the Malibu hills.
Hey, check it out.
And we always had to go in the morning and race the sun. It was brutal.
So, according to my guidebook,
Oh, I can imagine.
And Andrew later admitted that he was like really hungover in this scene, which was perfect because he looks pissed off.
Now, I will say what you guys did here made the hair on my arms stand up.
Because when you look at it, you don't know he's standing back there the whole time. Like, that's the thing I love about the Ghost Jason costume. It blends into the forest. And so I really can just be right there and you wouldn't know I'm there. And this is, again, one of the first scenes that we wrote for the film. This was a scene that we shot multiple times and tried different ways. And we ended up on this one. Like, it's a little bit of a cheat, but it really establishes sort of what I feel is like a warning.
Yeah.
This is Kyle's warning to turn back.
And he
Jason's
didn't listen.
going to give him another warning. But also Jason sees here that Kyle is a formidable opponent. He just makes one step behind him and he's up with a knife in his hand. Jason's unarmed. So Jason knows, I might be able to get my hands on him, but if he gets me with that knife, as we learned in the video game, he's going to have to be stunned for 5 seconds. He could get away. And Jason's number one rule is I can't let them get away. If they get away, my secret is out. And they will know that I'm still here. So he lets him walk deeper into the web. And he's going to follow him and keep an eye on him. And there may be a chance that Kyle doesn't even find the camp. Kyle wanders away. But now Jason is on his trail doing his thing, which I think that the early Friday the 13th films did really well. And what the later films sort of departed from, which was stalking. Jason stalks Kyle. We watch him follow him all the way into camp. And we get that really essential piece of Friday the 13th, which is the anticipation that somebody's watching you and you don't know it. Or you feel like somebody's watching you and you can't explain it. And that uneasiness taking, becoming a thing later on in the film, not being there the entire time. Even though I do like some of the films that do that. For me, I wanted to bring back that tension. And so that's what this really became about, was now he's getting stalked by the predator.
Right. And I mean, even in the original, the original Friday the 13th, before there was ever a Jason, Pamela stalked all of her victims.
Well, I mean, it's really in the first two films is when it was really, really prevalent, because both films sort of deal with an unknown killer. Who is killing people? We know that Jason's doing it in the second one, but we never see his face until the final battle when he wrestles with Paul in the living room. I think we see it like a couple of times really quick, but that's when we really see him pop up with the bag on his head. And we see him sit up in the bed one time, but that's where it really departed from part one. Well, part one, it's a mysterious killer. So there's always, Giallo style, which is, it's just the hand. It's just the Hitchcock. We don't see who's killing people. It's a mystery. And so, again, bringing that sort of like very useful technique back into these films and reusing it in a way with a little bit more technical prowess, because we have the ability to do that now. And with the mixed media, it sort of gave us another way to do it. Like, a lot of people look for Jason in the background when he's doing confessionals, and that was a plan to do that, but it ended up being too complicated for me to get in costume, run out into the back of the forest, and then not be able to hear the performance, and then have to watch back the performance. So we just used to be like, well, just let people look around. I won't be there, but they'll think I'm there, and that might actually be more effective. One of my favorite shots right there, doing the dolly up. It was like, it's starting to do those things that, like, these are the things that young filmmakers and newer filmmakers, if you can get your hands on equipment, or you can even be a little bit more crafty, you look for opportunities and big moments to do camera moves. Like, not everything has to be a camera move. You're not sliding the camera through every single shot all the time. But when you learn when the moments are, when to use specific shots, things like that, I think one of the things we did well in Never Hike Alone is we chose our moments well. Like, our shots are well composed. We do little tricks when they're earned, a little bit of motion here, pulling back because we're revealing the camp. subtle little things with lighting. So much of it is lighting. Chris Ellis, the DP on this one, did a fantastic job. And we really shot a lot of natural daylight. We were bending a lot of light from the sun with bounce boards. And this camp, which is located in Angeles Oaks, California, just gave us all of the production design and set that we needed to really capture big scope and scale, big buildings, buildings in the background, not just one building, not just like a singular building that we shoot around, but multiple cabins that have different looks. And, they're actually like this. I love the back of this cabin with, it always made me feel like it was a boat, like Noah's Ark with the big ramps kind of like leading up to it. This giant main cabin that we can mess with and set dress. A lot of the stuff that you see in these shots was up there. We just took it out of storage and like put it out on the floor. Obviously we added, like, we got things like calendars and we got the ducks. But we built some of those. Actually, some of those shots are from the camp. Like, we actually just repopulated things from this actual camp. Like, that box was from the camp. Those tools were from the camp. This box was not from the camp. We actually got this borrowed from the Airbnb we stayed at. But it was such a find. I mean, without this camp, I don't think we could have done what we did. It would have been so much different if we didn't find this place.
I definitely like the look of the camp and how you guys utilized it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, it's Cody. So Cody, who's in our chat, is one of our effects team artists. We actually have to have a meeting soon. See him. That was one of the shots. So this is another very early scene from very early on. One of the first things we shot. We did. I think we filmed this about 4 times, doing different rehearsals each time, testing cameras. We have some behind the scenes showing some of the older scenes that we did with this before we were able to install the blood and get the right ribbon up there and do some stuff. But this is when we were trying to figure out our camera work and figure out our scope and tone of how the camp was going to fit together. And we would go back and reshoot things that were tests if we ended up shooting scenes around it that felt bigger and better and more on scope and scale and budget, and be like, oh, you know what? Since we did such a good job and learned all these tricks on this scene, let's go apply that to this scene and do it a little bit better. And we already know how to set it up, so we can go through it really quickly. A lot of that was like in the touch-up phase. And I really got to give credit to the team for being good sports and be like, hey, we're going to go do that scene again. But a lot of times it was like, no, we want to make it better. We want it to be as good as possible.
Right.
A lot of the stuff you see sort of like piled up, that was stuff that was up at the camp, but we wanted to make it feel like Camp Crystal Lake was under construction. That when it shut down while Christy was working on it with those kids, that there were pieces of it that weren't put back together yet. And they're still that way 30, 40 years later. And this is the scene you're talking about from before. Yeah, this main cabin is what, once we walked in here, this is like the feeling people get when they watch this scene for the first time is the feeling that we got when we walked in there for the first time and saw the potential of this place. We built all those tables. Shout out to Brittany Porter, who was our production designer for this film. She painted the crest. Built those benches, put up the oars. We built these cabinets to put stuff up, hung up the pictures. The only thing that was in there was the ping pong table and that hexagonal table that's in the corner that they fight on later. Other than that, everything else in there was built or rented from a prop house.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one question that I usually end up asking, how much did it cost you to film this and get everything out so that people could see it?
The first production was around $50,000 to $60,000. A lot of that was invested by private investors, myself included. My family gave me a little bit of money. Friends gave me a little bit of money. We had an executive producer by the name of Barry J, who was the one who introduced us to Tom Matthews. And then we raised about $20,000 on Kickstarter. Our first Kickstarter didn't go through. We were trying to raise 40 grand. We only got to 30. We ran it a second time, raised 20. I put up a bunch of money, got into a bunch of debt, finished the film, and then we ended up doing our first home video campaign. And the home video campaign ended up raising $50,000. We took home about $40,000 of it to fulfill everything, took out another 20, and with the rest of it, we were able to sort of pay off debts and sort of like get to even with the crowdfunding side of it. Like, okay, finally we've broken even on the cost of the film. We ended up donating a lot of that money to the JD Mart's recovery fund that was left over. We ended up donating money to Penny Pine's reforestation program. And for those of you who don't know who JD is, he's listed as one of the directors of photography on Never Hike Alone. He was integral to us making this film. Without him, we couldn't have done it. He was a brilliant cameraman, or is a brilliant cameraman, and brought so much like energy and life to the set. Did a lot of the DP work on second unit days. Unfortunately, before the completion of the film, he got into a surfing accident and had an injury to his neck. He's now paralyzed from the shoulders down. Has been working his way back in recovery ever since. So there's the JD Mart's Recovery Fund, which is still open and out there. So if you research it and you feel like you want to donate, please do. JD is back in Massachusetts with his wonderful wife, Katrina. They live up near Boston, and he's still working in film and production. He works from his chair. He has a whole system that he uses to get stuff done. But me, JD, Andrew, we became very close on Never Hike Alone. In fact, on the final days of filming, it was the three of us who wrapped the final day of filming together. We were the ones who completed the final parts of Never Hike Alone on set. So when that happened, it was a real tragedy for us all to sort of, our friend had to move back to Massachusetts, and we lost him and everything that he had to go through. But he's doing well now. We love him to death. And please, if you can afford it, please donate to his fund, because it goes towards his recovery and just the way his life has changed now that he's living as a quadriplegic.
Absolutely.
This is a cool bonus scene that we added to the film. A good friend of mine, Brandon Pimentel, and I came up and built this set over a weekend. Because we were doing the red ribbons, and that was one of the cool things about the first film that I really liked enjoying, because I was like, oh, let's tie it back to the original film. Like,
right,
if you go back to the original camp and it's never been inhabited ever since, the crime scene wouldn't go away. All the crime scenes would still be there as crime scenes. The bodies would have been taken out, but because nobody owns the camp anymore because Christie's dead, and nobody wants to buy the land because they think it's cursed, that everything's just still left up there and no one's ever been up there. It's just been locked off. So the concept of that was really cool. Selling it with the red ribbons. And then once we started to do it and all the scenes started making more sense, we're like, how can we do this without the most famous kill in the movie other than Pamela, which was the bunk bed scene with Kevin Bacon. So it was one of those things where it was just like, I'm going to go do it. I scoured a bunch of wood from around the camp, built those bunk beds using cots. Those aren't actual bunk beds. We built those from scratch, and added that scene into his searching scenes. And it was one of the ways that we could take this giant camp and use different rooms, reset rooms, and then rebuild rooms to create new scenes and extend the life of the film. And it allowed us to work towards getting every single tag in there. Like, this is Brenda's tag, because she was thrown through the window of the kitchen, and right now we're in the kitchen. So that was sort of like the tag was there. That was sort of be like what they used to sort of start cleaning up, but they didn't, certain things like that. Again, like, what you're seeing here is like the camp's natural aura, if I could say that. Like, it, camera's gonna work thing. And there we go. Imagine exploring this place like for real. You know what I mean? Like, this is
right.
We do play a little camera trickery through here, a little set trickery. He's actually not walking from a set of staircases back there. We built sort of a hallway that he can come up to extend the life of this attic, and restructure it so there were less escape places. That's going to be important in the next movie, by the way. Hint. So far we've gotten, we've gone through the camp. We know the crime scenes are there. We got Kyle's history of the camp. We're sort of like, what I liked about Never Hike Alone, storytelling wise, is that we were reintroducing fans back to the franchise. Because if you think about it, 30, 40 years have passed. We've had 12 different films. There's a lot of different variety out there. What's the tone? What's like, what Jason is it? What's going on? And I think one of the things that we did that I think landed well with fans was that we sort of like said, like, remember why we were all here? Remember why this all started? Remember sort of like what the strengths of this franchise used to be before it got sort of ridiculous and it became all about it being like almost a joke within and of itself. What happens if you took it a little bit more seriously? What if you grounded these events and started to play it through, a scene like this? And I think that like getting to experience it with Kyle and him sort of grounding it and putting it into the real world in a way sort of helped fans, see Jason in that light again, and that hopefully made him scary again. And that was sort of the point, was to make Jason scary again, get him out of the formula, and put him in a new place where he could really, into a new formula that he could really thrive in. And I think that of all the slashers and horror movie villains, Jason fits this type of style of film very well. The atmosphere, the setting, him as a character, this setup, the 1v1, obviously like making a Friday the 13th film, making a 1v1, that is like insane. And I thought about that the whole time. I'm like, I don't know how people are going to like this, because this is exact opposite of all of our instincts. You know what I mean?
Right.
But every time we felt like we were losing our instinct for what we thought Friday the 13th was, we'd stumble onto something like this. So this is a birthday card that I pulled out of some of like the antiques that we ordered. And I read that and I went, I'm putting this in the film because this is very thematic with the relationship between Jason and Pamela.
Right.
And these scenes that sort of are built around not only the character of Kyle, but the character of Jason, the character of the camp, making them characters again, instead of just sets. So just seeing that there's not just a killing machine there, but there's a character. There's a character with a history. And that sort of gives it a little bit more oomph. It gives it a little bit more weight instead of it just being, a vapid killing machine. For me here, I actually got stabbed in the hand in that scene. We forgot to switch out the prop knife for one of them, and I grabbed Kyle and stabbed me in the hand.
Yoy.
Yeah, that hurt. Shout out to Donnie, our stunt double for Andrew, doing that shot. It was Donnie Nichols, amazing stunt guy. He does a lot of work through this scene. Eats a lot of hits for Andrew.
I like how that happened.
Yeah. Oh, I love, that's one of my favorite sequences of like the camera rolling out and stopping and all that stuff. That was like a nice that we did with that. The Superman landing, superhero landing of him jumping down like it's no thing. I don't know. I can't remember how far. I think we're 25 minutes into the film right now, but like now you're seeing Jason Foley for the first time. It feels earned. It feels epic. It feels big. It's not like, walk through the park. And then just establishing his power too, which was really important. But another thing to really kind of keep an eye in here and think of is how much Kyle is surviving. Because how many times has Jason done this to other characters in other movies? All of these moves, they'd all be dead.
And how many of them have survived it?
None of them. Getting thrown off the second story, getting swatted into the tree, having an axe thrown at them. Very seldomly do these characters ever actually survive. So Jason is sort of confused. Like that was one of the things I thought of it, like as far as like where his headspace here in these films. He's like, who is this guy? He keeps getting back up. Like
this guy's pissing me off.
And he keeps getting more and more pissed off. Like Jason's very reasonable at the beginning of this movie, if you think about it. Like, don't come in. Don't make.
He could have killed him right there at the no trespassing sign.
Yeah, but he didn't because he's trying to avoid attention. And Kyle really hasn't done anything. He's not smoking weed. He's not having sex, but now he's trespassing. So that's sort of like he's dancing that line. Another thing here is we all hate when characters trip over nothing. And so I wanted to write the scene that was like set up, like, hey, we set up that there's this barbed wire fence here, like, and it's really low. So as he's running through the forest, he'd be looking behind him and he'd trip on it and not realize it, actually give him something to trip on. That actually leads to him getting, these wounds, which a lot of people are like, what do you mean you had to clean his wounds? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know if you guys know what septic shock is, but it's real. And if you don't clean your wounds after crawling through the dirt in the middle of the forest, you could go into shock and die. Get a fever and you won't be able to move. You'll tense up, all your muscles will tighten up. And then if you don't get help, you die from just being stuck out in the forest. And if he can't move, Jason's also going to get him. So that's sort of one of the reasons behind that sort of comes up in discussion where people ask, like, why does Kyle make the decision he makes to go back to camp later? Again, we're back up on our Malibu Trail scene here. And yes, exactly. Our ghost Jason is a tactical Jason. He is a Jason that has learned from previous encounters with other survivors who have killed him. And he is doing his best to stay alive and not get buried again. Because it hurts and he doesn't truly die. So he suffers through all of that stuff. He's trying to just maintain this peaceful life that he has. Here, like fighting with Jason, something like those scenes always made me most tense when people were like sort of like in Jason's grasp, like Tommy getting grabbed out of the grave, or like, there's times where Ginny's getting close to getting grabbed and stuff like that. Those scenes always freaked me out the most, more than the kills. So again, using those scenes in a new way to go like, hey, like, this is the real bread and butter of Friday the 13th. Everybody thinks it's just the gore, but like if you go here, like there's no gore in that scene, but that's scarier than most of the kills you see in the actual films.
Right.
So again, it's these are the things I try to like bring to light with Friday the 13th and remind people like this is Friday the 13th's true strength. These are the things that are hidden within all those other things that truly make them good movies. Obviously, the gore and some of the things that happen in those films are great. I mean, they change the scope of horror and the way we look at it today. But as far as viewing it and repeat viewing, these are the things that really stand out in the films that do well, and the films that don't do well have less of these scenes. So you'll see, that's sort of like the way the formula works in my head.
No, I absolutely love the story behind this one, because you've only got the two characters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, for the majority of the film, it's just the two characters. You've got Kyle and Jason, and Jason's just trying to catch him.
Mm-hmm.
Where that's where his main focus is on Kyle, because there is nobody else out there to distract him.
Mm-hmm. And he's out there, and now he's sort of like so is watching this in the context of the ghost cut. Okay, you see these kids come to camp early on in the world. Jason dispatches 3 kids like nothing, and you just see that like life's kind of like the same again. I guess it's back to the normal routine. Never Hiking the Snow comes along. Somebody wanders in the camp, accidentally sees him, almost gets away. He almost got caught. You see how far Jason is willing to go to make sure that no one knows that he exists.
Right.
And now this happens again. And now you know what he's fighting for here. You know that he's fighting for his secrecy and what he's trying to protect, that bond that he still has with his mother, even beyond the grave. The isolation of the camp, knowing that like the police don't think he really exists, knowing that Tommy can't find him, like all of that is at risk because this guy's still running around. And, when we were writing this movie and shooting this movie, I had ideas for the future. And even though they weren't necessarily thought out, the baseline theory behind what I was writing was something that I knew that I was saying, if I need to go right in either direction, I need to leave myself the openings to make story connect. And so I think that's one of my most proudest thing about this series is that by the time Never Hike Alone 2 is done and we get that out, you're going to see that there are things that, like, I left myself some things to do from Never Hike Alone 1 that will carry over into future movies, which is something that I've always wanted to see Friday the 13th do as it moves forward, as more films come out. You know, when they finally do announce a new movie, when they finally do make new productions, I don't want to see the franchise make the same mistake, which is like, okay, we're going to focus on the first movie. And then if that does well, we'll write something for it. It's like, no, that creates too much. It just turns it into silly films again, because now you write yourself into corners that you can't write yourself out of. Write for a 3-film arc. Write yourself to leave enough opening to be like, these things will make sense if you write in either direction. And that there's story that goes in both directions. And the more solid the story is, the easier it will be to build on top of it and have fans walk away feeling satisfied versus feel like, oh, well, you know, they'll make that old excuse of like, well, what did you expect? It's a Friday the 13th. And I feel like after 12 films, after 40 years, that's no longer an excuse we can settle for. Like, there are a lot of competent filmmakers out there. There's a lot of great writers out there. There's no reason why a team can't be built to come in, write 3 films, and have a great plan now. Like, don't wish you did that, you know, after the fact and be like, well, I wish we would have more of it thought out because we sort of had to like look the other way on this and that and the other thing. And it's like, no, like, if I can do it for my fan film, if I've been sitting here like connecting all the dots and putting all the story strings together and saying that like everything's going to pay off, this leads to this, leads to this. If I can do that for films that like barely cost, like, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, we did it, the whole thing. I mean, we've raised almost $500,000 to do all of these productions, but they're going to spend $20-30 million.
Right, exactly.
Still,
they got a hell of a lot bigger budgets than the fan filmmakers. So really, what's their excuse?
And they have access to more talent in the sense that, like, not that we don't have a talented team, but it's my talented team and a very small crew versus my talented team with like an entire studio level production behind them.
Right.
We do really well at managing studio level production. But if we actually had those resources, we could elevate this to the nth degree. And I think in some scenes, when everything works right, we do hit that level. Like, you can't,
absolutely.
Like this shot right here, this is shot on a steady camera. This is a oneer. This is a very technical move with 4K lights outside, stunts involved, blocking. You know, this is a complicated shot. This is a complicated scene, and it tells a story. You know, it's not just oneer and oneer. You know, it's a magic trick. Kyle's there and now he's not. Now where is he? And we see it play through in one single moment to see that like he really only had this much time to get away and hide. And it adds, you know, and it does those things. And so, you know, within the context of the film, within the context of a series of films, it's the type of thinking that I think Friday the 13th fans deserve, because it's not something that's really been done for Friday the 13th before. And if you elevate the storytelling techniques, then you can elevate the experience for the audience. And I think that that's what people really appreciate about this movie, is that we're trying to elevate on the things that we love and sort of, you know, the things that we are campy or the things that like we sort of let go because we say it's just a Friday the 13th from the 80s, that we say like that's no longer the rule of thumb anymore. Now the rule of thumb is actually to play it serious. And we still get to have fun. You know what I mean? There's still room for fun. It's not that it all has to be like, you know, some Christopher Nolan drama, but it is at least you can take it a little bit more seriously. You can get a little bit more invested and not be let down by stupid decisions or stupid characters. That all the characters are smart. They're making smart decisions. And even when they make the right decision, it doesn't always work out in their favor. Exactly. And those are the films that really do the best. And obviously stuff with like really good moments and stunts, like kicking open doors, which is a lot of fun.
Right.
Shout out to, I'll go ahead. I was going to say,
getting thrown through stuff, like getting thrown through a table or a wall, even. You know, that's.
I was going to say, again, shout out to Donnie Nichols again for getting thrown through the table and getting tossed over a chair and stuff like that, and Andrew doing a lot of his own stunts as well. Here, I have a stunt double. His name's Brian Forrest. He did a lot of the work on these nights where we had like big technical fight nights and we had a lot of camera work. We jumped back and forth between the costumes. So it was me starting with the kick, and then I have the makeup on.
Now, this is the first time you see Jason without the mask. That was I can't even tell you how well done that was, man.
Kelsey Burke. So Kelsey Burke was the effects artist on Never Hike Alone 1. She's an amazing artist. She's doing wonderful things right now. Right now, she's working on Rebel Moon with Zack Snyder. So that's the level of artist that we had working with us in the friggin' woods on a fan film. I mean, that's sort of what makes this sort of special, is that like we've been working with some of the best people. I mean, Cody Wilkins, who's in the chat, who's one of our effects leads. You know, this guy has worked on some of the biggest films out there. He worked on Halloween and Halloween Kills, you know, did a lot of great work for Vincent Van Dyke for many, many years, is now doing his own thing at 3D modeling department. You got to get him there. He does a great job doing that stuff. But yeah, like I said, like Brian is my stunt double for a lot of things. We jump back and forth in the costume. So I have to give him a lot of credit. It's not just always me. And a lot of the times it's Brian more often than you think, because our days get so complicated and our team is so small that if I'm behind camera, we move a lot faster. If I'm in costume, we move a lot slower. So on big, expensive nights like this, I usually hand the keys over to Brian, and it comes him to kind of emulate the types of moves that I want to see out of Jason and for us to match body language. It was 37 degrees shooting this scene in the middle of May.
That's
2017. All that breath, that's all real. It started snowing.
I believe it. Now, I got to say that the concept of Ghost Jason was one of the things about your Jason that drew me really into your film franchise, if you will, was because there was no chevron, there's no marks on it. You know what I mean? It lives up to the ghost. I wish to God I had one of those masks.
This is the mask. This is the one that was just in that scene. This is the main mask for Never Hike Alone. The name came from Brandon Scott Murphy, who helped me do the replicas for these films. I was looking for a name for it. I almost called it the Bone Hawk. He came up with Ghost, and then a good friend of mine, Joe Gallo, who's a big fan of Never Hike Alone films, when I told him, I said, hey, we named the hockey mask the Ghost Hawk. And he goes, oh, does that make him Ghost Jason? And so ever since then, the name stuck. Right. So we got the mask. We got, like, in the new campaign, we got these 8-inch figures made by a good friend of mine, John, painted up by another good friend of mine who does these. It's, yeah, lots of cool stuff. These are great. These are available on the Kickstarter right now. I mean, at the Indiegogo right now for Never Hike Alone 2. They'll help fund our Ghost in the Fog animated film. So there's the VIP one. If you just want to get one of these, email me. We can work out a price for that as well. And then, yeah, my friend Jeff does the painting for these as well. Yeah, isn't it? We also have, for those who want like this copy, we have the Ghost cut on Blu-ray. It's on the film. We also have copies of Never Hike in the Snow, Never Hike Alone, VHS, all that stuff. So if you haven't seen the Never Hike Alone, if it's your first time watching this, or you want us to be in Never Hike Alone 2, as far as like being a backer with your name in the credits, or a VIP or a producer, all of those things, go to Indiegogo, search Never Hike Alone 2, and the crowdfund's going to stay open all winter. Indiegogo, yes. Indiegogo.com. Indie with an E, I-N-D-I-E, Gogo. Or it might be, I don't know. No, there's no E. Never mind. Ignore me. I can't spell. This whole sequence, again, Kelsey Burke, Cody Wilkins, who is in our chat, or was in our chat. He was here on this day. He was helping us out with this effect. I think this is the first time I met Cody, was on this trip. I think this is the first time he came and helped out. And obviously you'll see the effect here. Brilliant work by Nora and her team. Not Nora, Kelsey and her team to build this one. Obviously, we're going to have the red ribbons. We're going to have Pamela's ribbon. And this is just, definitely look at the behind the scenes and Never Hike Alone on our channel. You'll see some of the behind the scenes shots of like the head that we built here because it's so realistic.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
awesome. Squish.
So Cody was the one who was one of the people who pulled the rig on the head, popping out of the back. A lot of people ask, how did Kyle get found by the EMTs? We will answer that.
You're okay.
In Never Hike Alone 2.
You're in good hands.
And why does he just all of a sudden appear in an ambulance? Well, how many times in an early Friday the 13th do you see a main character survive their main encounter with Jason, run off into the forest, wake up the next day, get attacked by something in a dream, and then wake up in an ambulance? Happens in the first 3 films.
Yeah.
You wake up in the hospital. You wake up with Ginny being wheeled into the ambulance. You wake up with Chris Higgins being walked out to the car. You know, they almost did it in part 4 with Trish waking up in the hospital and going to see Tommy. And then this is really a play off of Friday the 13th part 5, with now that Kyle is a survivor, he's like a Tommy, and he sees hallucinations. So this is very much inspired by the last scene in Friday the 13th part 5, where Tommy wakes up in his bed and he sees Jason standing at the foot of it. In that film, Tommy defeats Jason. In this one, Kyle's just getting used to the real ghost Jason. So he's, you know, obviously flipping out and trying to escape. And it's a premonition for what's to come. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Amelia. You know, one of the concepts we wanted to come up with while making Never Hike Alone was that, you know, sometimes surviving the film isn't the best thing for you. And, you know, now, even though he survived, he's cursed for the rest of his life. And that's a concept we really play with in Never Hike Alone 2 in the way that affects our characters. You know, taking a line from the first one, he's still out there.
What the hell is going on back here?
And then obviously this.
That was awesome.
Yeah. In 2017, that was quite a feat. You know, we kept that a secret for a year. There was a canceled movie that year. Nobody knew what Never Hike Alone was going to be. You know, you've made it all the way this far, and you're like, damn, these guys aren't bad. This is way better than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be like, you know, another like haphazard fan film that people really didn't have like the equipment and time to really pull off. But this was a real film. And then all of a sudden, you have Tom Matthews show up, and it changes the game. You know what I mean? Like we had, you know, there were fanboys and adult men crying all over the country on that night, and you know, we just wanted to make Friday the 13th fans smile. That was the goal. It was like, just let's have something to smile about. There's been so many canceled movies, you know, so many things going on that like we can't get a movie made, and there hasn't been a great movie made in a long time. Like, you know, I'll give the remake the fact that it does have its fans. It wasn't my tempo. I thought that there was so much more room for growth, and Never Hike Alone was sort of born out of that passion to be like, I think that there's another version of Friday the 13th that can be told. Getting a chance to bring Tom back allows us to expand on storylines that were abandoned, that fans have always wanted us to, always wanted the series to go back and look at. So being able to work with Tom, expand the character, expand his lore, and complete his story has been a real driving factor in making these films. And the fact that we have the opportunity to do that with Tom, that, you know, he's really carrying his story on through our films, and really letting us tell his story, even though he's done other stuff. I mean, you know, if you talk to Tom, you go to a convention with him, like the one that we're focused on, the one that really sort of carries the tone and concept for this Tom is the Never Hike Alone series. And it's going to be fun to really sort of like, I mean, Never Hike Alone was built out of this team. I mean, Never Hike Alone 2. Knowing that we were going to do this, knowing that like Tommy, and now it's Tommy v. Jason, and that, I mean, this literally 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning right now when we're filming this with the sun coming up. It was perfect. We were racing the sun here to make sure that we can get it done correctly, but it actually sets us up for the next day very well.
Right.
Again, another little clever oneer in there to help us kind of like condense time and avoid multiple setups of like having to do fight scenes in different rigs because we were really out of money at this point. We spent all our money on renting this ambulance, getting everybody up there. It was a lot.
You know, to see the quality of the video, I don't understand how you can call this a fan film just because you don't have the budget of Hollywood, but you put out just as good a film as anybody in Hollywood could put out. I don't. So for me, as a fan, to watch these films that are, done so well, it's hard to believe that it's a fan film.
Thank you. I mean, I gave myself a really hard time at the end of this for all its shortcomings in certain ways and shape and forms. But when I go back and I watch this, I mean, I think about we made this film in a time when Friday the 13th fan films weren't the cool thing to do. Raising money wasn't easy.
Right.
Filming something independent at this quality, even when other original films had access to stuff, wasn't this easy. And so I really sort of go back and give myself a little bit more leeway on some of the mistakes that I made while making Never Hike Alone, but realizing that story alone, we really did something. We really pulled it together. And we set something up. And the fact that it's not called Never Hike Again anymore, obviously, because this is when it was supposed to be the singular films happening. We're doing Never Hike Alone 2 as its own thing. And it's going to be in 2023 now.
Right.
But yeah, it was a real sort of, thank God it's over now. It was an adventure to make that movie, and it changed my life. Obviously working with Tom Matthews, I was able to expand the story, something I didn't think I was going to be able to do. The original ending of Never Hike Alone was the ambulance driver who wasn't Tommy died. Jason climbs in an ambulance and kills Kyle. And that used to be the ending. We used to do the drone shot was going to be a straight drone shot going up, looking down at the van as Jason climbs into the van, and then blood was going to start shooting out the back of the van. And then we were going to tilt up to the sky and say, Never Hike Alone. So he didn't make it away at the end. He thought he got all the way there. And that was going to be it. But when we signed Tom, we were like, well, I can't kill Tom Matthews. Fans would kill me. But we can't go the whole movie and not have someone die, only in a dream sequence. Right. How is this going to work? And so we really just kind of had to put our heads together as a team. Someone suggested that, well, if Tommy gets pulled out of the ambulance, we don't see him get killed. Technically, film rules are if you don't see a character die on screen, then they're not dead. So you can explain it however you want later on down the line. But for right now, you can have him get back in the car. I was like, perfect. He gets out. He kills everybody else. Tommy survives his attack because Axel saves him. And we get to watch them drive off into the day and open up the idea that this story is going to continue. For a while, Tom and I went around Hollywood pitching Never Hike Alone 2 as an actual film to follow up Friday the 13th. The lawsuit at that point had screwed over the video game. Had stopped things from getting made. We got to pitch Friday the 13th Never Hike Alone as an anthology series to Warner Brothers. I got all the way through 2 meetings at WB. They went really, really well. I pitched to one of the heads of development, head of an entire department. They loved it. We were scheduling time to go meet with a streaming company that I cannot name, but they own some of the, it's where a lot of people go every week to watch some of their favorite shows. And we would have done, that meeting would have done well, we would have gone and made an anthology series that would have been 8 episodes a year, 6 to 8 episodes a year. One of those episodes would have been a Never Hike Alone entry. The other entries would have been made by other directors of different caliber and quality, telling any story about Friday the 13th that they want to tell in any timeline with any type of Jason. Could have been about Pamela, could have been about another Roy, could have been Part 8 Jason, Jason X, Jason in Hell, all those different things. We were going to come up and write that series and do that. And then we all thought that because Sean was going to lose the lawsuit, that the lawsuit would be over. Sean appealed. when Sean appealed, they canceled my meeting because they said, well, if it goes into an appeal, that's another 2 years. We can't make anything. So we'll just pick up conversations when this is over. The pandemic happened. The judge in the case died, pushed the ruling back even further on the appeal. And by the time the appeal was settled, by the time we came out of the pandemic, all those people that I worked with at Warner Brothers had moved on to different companies. And those sort of relationships all kind of fell off to the wayside. And we decided that like we couldn't wait around for the studios anymore. We'll continue to make our films. The first one being Never Hiked in the Snow. That was after the second appeal went through. After the second appeal went through and our meeting got canceled, we went ahead and scheduled shooting Never Hike in the Snow and started raising money for it, hoping that when the appeal was done that we could go back at it again. And then pandemic set everything back. So now we've taken the films, we put them back together into a feature film. We ran our campaign. We've currently raised just about $230,000 on paper, about $205,000 after all the fees. We've shot the first 2 scenes of the film. In August, we'll have a trailer releasing on January 13th, 2023, your first look at Never Hike Alone 2. We're currently fundraising to add a bonus feature on the Never Hike Alone 2 Blu-ray, which is called Ghosts in the Fog. It's an animated Friday the 13th film, which from the anthology series that I pitched to Warner Brothers, one of the things I brought to their attention was I want to do Friday the 13th in animation. So I want to do Friday the 13th as a live action thing for Never Hike Alone stuff. But I also want to encourage us to do 1 or 2 episodes a year as an animated film. And we actually had Warner Brothers Animation as one of the partners that were going to come in on that. I don't know if I'm supposed to sign an NDA and say I can't say this anymore, but I'm just going to put this out in the world to let people know that this was going to happen, that there was a very good chance that we were going to go down this line and develop this thing. And this might have come together if not for the second appeal. That we were at least going to have a sit down with New Line and do all this stuff. This was going to be discussed at a professional level. And the only things we're doing now is essentially making Never Hike Alone 2, making Ghosts in the Fog as proofs of concept to say, like, this could have worked. This could have been on a streaming service. This could still be on a streaming service. It's worthy, as they're getting other things done and other things figured out, to make their feature film, that they should think about doing a streaming series. They should think about graphic novels. They just shut down the Jason Rise's graphic novel on Kickstarter. It's a real shame. Like I said before, if you ask me, that was the best looking Friday the 13th comic I have ever seen. Any comic, the Pamela series that they did, the Jason versus Leatherface, the Freddy versus Jason, all of those weird bloodbath comics and everything else that they made, My Summer Vacation, all that stuff, even, there was Badland and stuff like that. The artwork, the storytelling, the characters they were using, that's what Friday the 13th fans want. And the studios came in and said, nope, none of that. Shut it down. When they could have come in and been like, hey, you got something really great here. We're going to give you the official licenses, or we're going to work with you to get those things, and let's put the money up and let's release this so fans have something to consume. I mean, we've gone 13 years without new content. We got a game that got taken away from us. Friday the 13th fans want films. They want content. They want stories. So why not flood the market with them? It would make more sense than trying to restrict it and throw all their eggs in one basket for one film, because as we know, Friday the 13th fans are very divided on what they love. So if you try to encapsulate everything in one film, it's going to be a lot harder to make everybody happy rather than spreading the content out, doing what like Chucky's doing. You have Child's Play the reboot with a brand new story that has nothing to do with Charles Lee Ray. And then you have Chucky the series, which has everything to do with Charles Lee Ray and the original creators of that franchise. So fans are getting the cake and eating it too. There's room for a new film to play and be experimental, because there's a place where they can go to their comfy blanket that they know from childhood and be like, oh, everything's still the same over here. What are they doing in the crazy movie? That doesn't work for me, but a new generation can love it. And both fan bases can, they can argue and they can debate, and that sort of drives the attention of the fan base to be passionate about watching these films. Same thing can happen to Friday in even bigger sense, because Jason is that much bigger of an icon. The hockey mask is the most recognizable horror iconic prop in the world. Like you can go anywhere in the world, hold up a hockey mask, people will go Jason, or they'll go Michael, and not really, but you'll know that they meant Jason.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think that it's time. The Friday the 13th world, the fan film world, is reaching its end, in my opinion. I think that like it's sort of been tapped out. Everyone's thrown in their hat into the ring. Lots of different varying sizes of productions and stories and outlandish things. It's time for this type of storytelling to graduate from the fan film level and get at the studio level. Start exploring this multiverse of madness, this Jason verse, this Voorhees verse. Start exploring that with studio directors, with directors with credits under their belts, because there are working directors who are making some of the best films out there right now who are fans of Friday the 13th. Not to say that he ever would, but I think Quentin Tarantino said that he was a fan of Friday the 13th. Can you imagine if you could hire Quentin Tarantino to come make a 45 to 90-minute episode on an anthology series and just have a Quentin Tarantino the 13th? That would be amazing. It's time for us to celebrate this franchise and see it celebrated from a certain way, rather than a very select few amount of people getting together in a room, deciding what fans should have, and then only giving them a little morsel. And from my perspective, since at least 1988, not doing a good job.
Right.
Constantly dropping the ball. You know what I mean? Like, New Line gets it, and what do? They listen to Sean and say, take the mask off him. Then they send him to space. Then they do Freddy versus Jason. They do a decent job.
Yeah.
Other than Jason saying that Jason's scared of water. And they can argue with us all they want about that, but we all cringed during that scene.
Oh, okay. So I don't typically do this during the show, but I have got to say, for the most part, I liked the concept, I guess. And I guess it was mainly because it was just another a Jason film. The Jason X, the Freddy versus Jason, Jason X, they should have. I think that one there could have been a little bit better thought out and executed. The Freddy versus Jason, what I didn't like about that, and it's got nothing to do with Ken Kersinger. Ken Kersinger's good at what he does, but what they did with Jason, it actually kind of pissed me off. They made him seem like he was just a mindless killing robot thing that was being controlled by Freddy Krueger.
Okay.
Which that drove me nuts.
That's one of the things there too. Jason's on-screen look has deteriorated over the years as well. For me, I actually like the way he looks in part 8 up until he takes the mask off. I think it's one of the more interesting looks. Like it actually fits him. Like Kane has a good build in that movie. The costume isn't bad. The gloves are a little weird. The mask obviously is off. It's not the original mask, but it's not bad. It still feels like Jason. Jason Goes to Hell from Screen 1. I'm like, that's not Jason.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
Just, you can debate about that, but from just my initial reaction, I was like, I don't like that. The blue suit, and then Jason's not even in the movie, and then he comes back, he's got the blue jumpsuit again, or it's like tucked in, which Jason never tucked in his shirts. And the big bubble head. He had the whole suit on, but we never really saw what was under the suit. So why did they even bother building that giant suit? A lot of wasted money there.
There was very little about that film that I actually liked. For me, the best part of that film, there was two best parts for me. It was when he deep fried the little guy.
In fact, he just passed away.
Yes,
Leslie Jordan.
Leslie Jordan, thank you.
Yeah.
See, my wife and child are both huge fans of Leslie's. Neither one of them knew that he was in Jason Goes to Hell.
He's one of the best parts of it. He's a great comic relief.
Yeah, absolutely. And the woman that played his wife, she was just as equally as funny. But that and the Freddy glove coming up and pulling the mat, that right there, those are the only two things about that film that I even remotely liked.
I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of the Friday the 13th alumni, Adam Marcus being one of them. He's very humble, about the approach that he took with Jason Goes to Hell. Obviously, he's proud of the film. He should be. He was the filmmaker behind it. He was put in a very uncomfortable situation to make that film, a very hard situation. He had other ideas, which after I heard his other ideas, I sort of like completely forgave him for what I saw. And Jason Goes to Hell, because I'm like, man, you did have the right idea. They didn't let you do it. And what you had to work with left, I mean, like, it's still a well-produced movie. It still looks like it's the most professional-looking Friday the 13th film, other than Freddy versus Jason and the 2009 remake, as far as like production quality goes. Jason X is a drop in quality, a drop in production value. The CG sucks. It's just really bad. Even for that time period, it's really bad. Jason doesn't really look great. Jason looks like a hobo in Freddy versus Jason. He's really dopey looking. The mask is very dopey looking. And then even when they got into the remake, I think Sackhead Jason in that movie is better looking than face mask Jason in that movie. I don't like the look of the hockey mask in the movie. I think Derek Mears' costume was over-designed. There's too much stuff going on. There's too many things on him. Ghost Jason really came from me hating the look for the remake and saying, like, you don't need all that shit, like simple jacket, gray shirt, brown pants. Like, if you simplify his look and make a creepy looking mask that looks original and cool and haunting, that you'll have an effective look. And Ghost Jason and Never Hike Alone stemmed for me saying, listen, I feel like the costume for Jason over the last 2 decades has really fallen apart. 3 decades, 4 decades at this point. I want to redesign Jason how I would design him as a new character, and I want to go from there. And that's where my design for Ghost Jason come from. And one of the things, I've been saying this for a long time, but I actually got somebody to finally shoot it. I'm going to be releasing on my channel within the next few months a breakdown of how I came up with the design for Jason Voorhees, what materials we use for Ghost Jason Voorhees, and sort of the story behind making this mask, the story behind putting the costume together, and the evolution of that character. And if we eventually raise enough money, the idea of the story of something called The Ghost of Crystal Lake, if we raise $300,000 for the Never Hike Alone 2 campaign, we're going to examine the story of how Ghost Jason came to be, saying that Jason used to look like Jason used to look from Friday the 13th parts 1 through 8. When he got washed out into the ocean at the end of part 8, that design that we knew from the 80s was destroyed completely. His costume, even that secondary, tertiary mask that he has, is gone. When he comes back to Crystal Lake at the beginning of the Never Hike Alone time period saga with Disappear and Never Hike in the Snow and all this stuff, he's rebuilt his costume. He's rebuilt himself from things that have come from the camp and other things that have come through the camp. And that's the story of the Ghost of Crystal Lake, is this downtrodden, beaten, defeated Jason sort of rebuilding himself and rebuilding his life and sort of coming up with this new version, this Ghost Jason, this a little bit more, this wiser, elder Jason that has just seen too much shit and is a little bit like Danny Glover from from Lethal Weapon. I'm getting too old for this shit. I'm taking a new approach to this. Like, what's really important to me, and how am I going to make this work? Because I can't keep doing this. If I'm going to keep surviving all of this stuff, how am I going to make this work? And the Ghost of Crystal Lake is sort of where we establish that in story sense. It's something I expanded upon after the first Never Hike Alone. But it's something that I pitched to Warner Brothers. I was like, this is a story that I really want to tell. And I would love this story in an animated form. That's one of the ways we're going to do it. We're also thinking about doing it in graphic novel style if we can't quite raise the money, just because I want all these stories to just get out into the lore of Friday the 13th for fans to really see that, like, listen, I've taken a lot of time to sit down and think about how could this whole series be woven together with one story thread, even though the films make it almost impossible to do it. And only because I've studied these films for decades and spent a lot of time like writing and rewriting and doing stuff to say that, like, I've spent enough time to say, I think I figured it out. I think I figured out the common themes. I think I figured out all these things that if you apply this sort of filter or apply this sort of logic to the entire franchise, this is the only way it makes sense. And if you want to tell it any other way, you got to go back to the beginning and you got to rewrite the story. And that's what I think the new film should do. It should start from the beginning. I know they're going to start. I think they're going to start with the Pamela tale, is what I've heard, like coming through like the grapevine of people like spreading rumors. It really should start with Pamela. It should start with what happened to him and all those different things. But there are certain facts and events that need to change dates and things that need to happen in certain ways for them to tell a certain type of story. And on the other side of it, you have the supernatural revenant Jason that is born out of what the films sort of gave to us, not purposefully, but accidentally. The way that they sort of logicked out how things would happen, you sort of following the revenant storyline seems to make the most sense. And so we want to tell the story about this revenant, about this cursed boy who has been chosen to carry on this rage from his mother because she was driven insane by his death. And it's all built around their relationship as mother and son. And so with those themes really working in our favor, that's where the Never Hike Alone timeline kind of comes in, with those elements as the forefront, and anything else that doesn't fit into that narrative, when we slice it off the story, you know, even if it's something that happens in a film like telekinesis or him going to Manhattan or all these other things that sort of like came up during that time, that like when you cut these elements out or you cut this piece of information out, it may be breaking continuity from the films, but as a viewer, you don't miss it. And you might have not have wanted it to be there in the first place. So you're more thankful to be like, oh, thank God we don't address that, or thank God we don't bring that element back, because that had no place in the franchise in the first place. Let's get rid of all the extra bullshit and really kind of file it down to the things we love about the franchise, focus on those things, and then tell those stories.
Well, I can't speak for anybody in the audience, but I can say that from my perspective, your Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow, the concept of the two films, I think, was phenomenal. Your creativity is absolutely admirable. You guys, you and your crew did an excellent job. And as a fan of the franchise and a huge fan of Jason Voorhees, I personally want to thank you for coming out with your fan films, and anybody else who's made a fan film. You know, it's not an easy thing to do. I know it can't be. I know it takes a lot of money to do something like that. So I will live vicariously through you, the filmmakers, because I mean, I'm a videographer, but I don't have the type of equipment that a lot of the fan film makers have got the ability to get their hands on. I'm in a pretty, I don't want to say remote area, but we don't have, like, we have a Walmart Supercenter, but there's nothing, no video equipment rental places up in this area. There's nothing. Like, I don't have access to those things. So like I said, I get to live vicariously through you and other fan filmmakers that keep the Friday the 13th, in my opinion anyway, keeps the Friday the 13th spirit alive. So on behalf of my audience, as well as Kevin B Entertainment, I want to say thank you so much. And don't stop making the films.
We got this next one under us, and then after that, you know, hopefully the real films start coming back, and maybe one day we get an invite over to the Warner Brothers offices again. We can sit down with New Line and talk about some of the future and opportunities for them. But until then, you know, we got Never Hike Alone 2 in front of us. Obviously, we've been helping out a lot of other fan film entities to get their films out. There's obviously a lot dropping this year and next year. But, you know, pretty soon, you know, we're getting opportunities to work on some of our own original material. I just got attached to a new film. I can't talk about it yet. We're not in development. It's already been written. We're doing some adjustments to the development of it and going out and pitching that to raise money for it. We got original projects that Womp Stomp Films will be crowdfunding for, an animated film called Ghost Chicken, which I want to crowdfund for next year and get animated next year. It's something I'm really passionate about. It's a script that's won a lot of awards. It's a horror comedy about a vegan restaurant that's haunted by the ghost of the chicken and the one girl determined to figure out why. We have another short story film that we want to work with a filmmaker by the name of Jeremy Brown, who was the director of the first Vengeance film, who's since moved on and is doing more original stuff. Him and I collaborated on a project called EMF. He wrote it with, I think, one of the writers from the first Vengeance, Mike Mead. They wrote this wonderful script. I came in and did a pass on it. We're really passionate about this short film. Tom Matthews is going to star in the lead of that as well. And so we got a lot of really great original stuff right after this. And we're hoping that our fans from the Never Hike Alone universe and the Friday the 13th fans will show up and support us for our original material, because we're going to make it with the same passion, the same quality. We're bringing back all these same talented, wonderful people who support us. My cast and crew, who I can't do any of this without. So you thanking me, I'm passing that on to the people who support me. People like Brittany Montero and Kyle Klein and Andrew Lady and Tom Matthews and Vinny Guastafaro and Anna Campbell and everyone else in my casting crew. The people who've been showing up for years, Jessica Aaron Bennett, who's been our stunt coordinator for all these years, Nora Hewitt, Cody Wilkins, Kelsey Burke. All these people are just amazing people who, Evan Butka. I mean, I really can't do this without Evan. He, without him and his equipment and his connections to some of the gear people we do, Mike Appy, who's our editor, Rob Varncall, who's our post-production supervisor and VFX supervisor. We went from, like I said, a team of 5 or 6 people making Never Hike Alone. We're now a team of over 80 people from all over the world. Ryan Perez Dapple, our composer, who's done every single film that we've ever done. I think I'm going to try to use him on as much stuff as I can whenever he's available, because he's such a brilliant composer and songwriter. This is the effort of a lot of different people. And of course, the fans. Without the fans, without backers, without people going to the Indiegogo and saying, hey, $20 of my paycheck this week is going towards these crazy sons of bitches who are making these Friday the 13th fan films in their free time, because we want to see their version of this entertainment. I can't do it without any of these people. Obviously, a lot of this comes from my passion, a lot of ideas that I've had. And so to have people support it monetarily, with their time, with their talents, is the most humbling feeling that I could have as a director, because most of the time when you think about people who are creative, it just lives up here and they never get to see it come to fruition, out in the real world. And so you're doing it right. I mean, you got a great show right here as it is. But when you really get to see it do that, and then you see people gravitate towards it and enjoy it, it is a very humbling experience. And it's been life-changing. This has been a life-changing experience for me, and something I'm very grateful for. And when this all comes to a close, it's going to be a very sentimental time in my life to look back on and say, no matter where my career takes me, no matter what happens in the future, there was this time between 2016 and 2023, 2017, 2023, this 6-year span where fans were the driving force behind Friday the 13th. And you can't take any of that away from us, where we've really kind of filled the void that has been, you could say has been missing since 2010 when they stopped making films. But I think that void has been there even longer, in a certain sense of certain passion, certain sort of passion to want to make a Friday the 13th film. I think a lot of the times we look at the studios and I think that they see a quick buck. And when you look at these fan films, people don't see a quick buck. They see a lot of debt and a lot of time that they need to give towards it. But what they see is love and passion, and people who really care about these characters, who care about other fans, who care about Friday the 13th, making a film out of the love of it. So hopefully as time goes forward and the studios start to make films again, that they look at the fan filmmakers for inspiration to say, we did this out of love. Why are you making another Friday the 13th film? Why are you making the 13th fan film? Are you doing it because you missed out on a paycheck 40 years ago and now you need something so you can get residuals? Is that the only reason why you're here? Or are you here because you wake up thinking about these characters in your free time, thinking about what are they doing? Why did they do it this way? Why did they do it that way? You know, thinking about all those times that Friday the 13th brought you together with your family, with friends, with people that you didn't even know, but you meet them at a convention and you both love Friday the 13th. And so you talk about it and it creates a friendship between people that now you meet up every year at these conventions and you go to screenings together and you go and you get signatures from alumni that have been carrying the torch for years, like Kane Hodder, going to conventions for decades, dressing up as Jason for fans because they love it so much. That's passion. That's dedication. I think if anything there is to learn, like I said, learn from this, is that projects that come from that place are the ones that land with the fans. And that's what the fans deserve from the studios going forward. And I hope that, you know, in some way, shape, or form, we've inspired or at least set a new standard for not just other fan filmmakers, but the actual filmmakers themselves, because I think we've been victim too many times as fans to filmmakers who are just getting paychecks.
Right.
People who are just there because it's another job. And
right. I agree.
At the highest level, it's made by people top to bottom, soup to nuts, with people that they're at Warner Brothers or they're at New Line or they're going, we got to make a Friday the 13th because this means something to me. Not because not because you can put it on a poster and make money really easily, but because there's something burning inside of you and it's in the shape of a hockey mask. And you want to tell this story. So that's what I want to put out there into the world, is to say, like, that's where my passion comes from. And when I sort of go online and I speak my mind about Friday the 13th, this is where it's coming from, because this is what I want as a fan.
Right.
And the last thing I want to hear out of anyone's mouth for the rest of my life is, oh, it's just Friday the 13th, because Friday the 13th can be so much more if people care about it. And I think that fan filmmakers are proving that every single day when we release these films and we put them out there and we put these ideas on screen and we do the things that we've been asking the studios for decades. Fans are doing it.
Right.
And there's something special about that.
And one of the bonuses to the fans making the films is that you don't have to worry about the critics. You know, you don't have to go through all the BS that Hollywood filmmakers have to go through. Oh, well, no, you got to go back to the cutting room floor and cut out the best parts of your film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's, as a fan filmmaker, that's at your discretion, and nobody can tell you, well, you can't put that, you know what I mean? So as a fan film creator, I think you guys have a lot more wiggle room for creativity. You know what I mean? It doesn't, like,
we're
usually get away with the boobs and, you know, certain kills and stuff, but you guys aren't held to that same standard. You know what I mean?
We like, there are fan films out there that can do that and do that. They add boobs, they add kills, they do those things. Like those are, but I feel like that's a decree that came from Sean. That's a very unhealthy decree. Like, if you look at the way we look at films, like, obviously, like, there's nothing wrong with a little TNA in a movie. There's nothing wrong with a little gore in the movie, you know, having fun and doing all those things. But, you know, it came to the point where, like I said, it became a joke. It became this thing like, oh, you can't make a Friday the 13th film, and if within 3 minutes you don't see a boob or a kill. It's like, well, now you're just forcing these films into this, like, rule that you made that doesn't make the films better. It actually makes them worse. It actually, like, lowers the quality. It degrades the film into something that's very schlocky and campy. And again, like I said, it's just Friday the 13th. Well, no, I didn't watch Friday the 13th because there were boobs in it. I mean, maybe when I was a kid and I was like, oh, cool, this scene's coming up and has a boob, I'll get to see it for the first time. For me, it was the fear of Jason. It was being afraid of the guy in the hockey mask. And I wanted to feel that sense of fear. For whatever reason, as a horror fan, I just wanted to feel that. And I wanted to feel it for as long as I could in the film. And anytime they made Jason goofy or the film got goofy, I got pulled out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like where my passion comes from. But, you know, when it comes to fan filmmakers, we're our only restraint. We have to be the one that restrains ourselves from doing things that are campy, from making the same mistakes as the studios. you know, but we never have to get our knees cut out by the NPAA to say like, oh, you need to be R and this is going to make you X. Like the harder we go in a fan film, the better, because we're actually showing off the skills of our special effects people. We get to show you that what happens. Like it's one of the things I loved about working on Jason Rising was that film was built around the context of being able to do multiple kills. James being a very accomplished effects artist in himself, working with Christina Cordum to create those effects, you know, being able to borrow the head from a backer who actually owns the Pamela head, you know, having the actual Pamela head from the first movie in the film, things like that. Like those are opportunities that like you don't get on those. They don't think about those in the studio films. They don't even like a lot of the times if you go back and watch the studio films, they didn't even pay attention to the previous film that preceded it.
Right.
You know, they just started making something new because it was like, oh, it's another one of these Friday films. I don't know what happens in this one. I don't know how he gets up. It just happens. And like, there's a lot of magic in that. There's a lot of like, you know, freedom in that to do that. But I think that fans, me as a fan, if they were like, if you're going to go back and remake Friday, learn from the past movies, like learn not to do that. So thank you, Sophia. She's the best. And you know, you do it this way, and you know, you look at Terrifier 2 right now. You know what I mean? Like this independent movie made on Kickstarter, raunchy, raw, indie. It's got all, you know, all those things sort of like working against it on paper, but those are the things that horror fans want.
Right.
And you're seeing it untapped potential. That's the like what we're doing with these fan films, that film's doing with an original property, something that they created, something that they've grown since All Hallows Eve and all these other little short films that Art was in before they made Terrifier 1. And Terrifier 1 gave them enough momentum to make Terrifier 2. And now Terrifier 2 is terrifying friggin' movie theaters all over the country because horror fans are finally going and seeing the things that like it's not a PG-13 neutered movie because they got to hit a certain demographic so these certain people could go in. Like they're showing that like all of these like analytic ways to make a film more successful actually isn't helping. It's actually rounding everything off and making it worse, and fans are getting a little bit less intrigued by those things. Like Barbarian's doing really, really well in the theaters on a very small budget because it's done and it's made by independent studios. You have stuff like Smile doing really, really well right now, and obviously Halloween Ends, you know, going out and making $1 bazillion in its first weekend because it has name recognition. But look at the way that fans are reacting to things. Fans are more happy about the things that are cheaper than the things that are more expensive. And that's because it's made with more care and suspense versus like big Hollywood egos coming in and thinking that they need to make things in a certain way, or they need to reinvent the wheel in a certain way. You know, or just pulling the wool out from under the eyes because they're marketing it one way and selling it a different way.
Right.
Or presenting it a different way than they're selling it. And so fans are feeling a certain way about certain films. You don't want that. You don't want your fan to walk out, your fans to walk out of a film divided. You want them united in their love for it, because a fan base that's united in their love for a franchise gets people who aren't automatic franchise like simps going in and watching it no matter what. You're getting those people who don't normally watch a Friday the 13th going, oh, you mean this is worth checking out? And I would say that's one of the biggest strengths of Never Hike Alone. Never Hike Alone has got more people who weren't interested in Friday the 13th before interested in Friday the 13th. Now they want to go and learn more about the franchise and do those things because it's been made in a way that is appealing across all audiences. And it's doing enough to get the original fans in, and then it's doing just enough more to get people who normally wouldn't go in interested.
Right.
And we do that with the strategy of sort of raising the stakes and raising the quality of it. And then on the other side of things, you've got films like Terrifier who are doing those things that like the raw horror fans want and getting them excited about it from the gore factor, doing the things that the films in the 70s and 80s used to do, which is, oh my God, you're going to faint going into this movie. I haven't seen a film be able to actually legitimately say, like, people are puking and leaving the theater since, like, Last House on the Left and Exorcist and films from the 80s that use those monikers all the time. A film since the 80s hasn't been able to do that since Terrifier. So those are the two ways that the horror is successful, and everything else that kind of caught in the middle is just not as interesting, and it doesn't do as well.
I agree totally. Well, all right, Vincent, I'm not going to take up any more of your evening. Thank you so much again for joining me. Please keep me in the loop on everything else that you got going on, because Friday Night Frights might just be an October kind of thing. But I do also, my wife and I also have another talk show, and that's called The Main Event with Kevin and Mia. We've been discussing coming back for a 4th season. So who knows? Maybe we can catch up with you again at the beginning of next year and see where you're headed from there.
Totally. Maybe I can bring a few guests with me along that way. I know sometimes I can get Andrew and even Tom to come join me for some podcasts. Vinny Guastafera too. So maybe we can all get together and do some stuff and talk film and pop culture and all that stuff. Would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So yeah, stay in touch with me and keep me in the loop, because I'm very interested in what you guys got coming up next. Even all the original stuff.
People should just follow us at our social media on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram and YouTube. All of our stuff obviously goes there. We have a special screening going on this week, the Judy project that we did through the last year and a half. We're doing a short viewing of it because we made the film. It's, the filmmaker's trying to decide what he wants to do with it. All I know is that we made it with Womp Stomp Films. We're showing it for a week during Halloween season just to show everybody what we did, and then it's going to go away. So if people want to check that out, it's playing on the YouTube channel right now. All updates on Never Hike Alone 2, Ghost Chicken, EMF, lots of other projects that we have in the pipeline will all come through those channels. And as long as you're subscribed to us, you'll see the updates as they come out. Just keep an eye out for our things or check our page every now and then. Right now, remember, the Indiegogo for Never Hike Alone 2 is live. We are in demand. We made our goal of $150,000. We're now climbing towards $250,000. And we want to get all the way to $300,000. And with that money, we'll be able to make the full version of Never Hike Alone 2 and a bunch of bonus material, including the Ghost in the Fog animated film and the Ghost of Crystal Lake prequel story, either in graphic novel or animated form, which will all go on to the Never Hike Alone 2 Blu-ray. And like I said, we have what we watched tonight. The Ghost Cut is available on Blu-ray on that website. You can pre-order your copy now. If you get expedited shipping, you will be receiving your copy of the Ghost Cut sometime within the next few months. Nice.
All right. Well, good luck for all your future endeavors. And again, thank you so much.
And these guys are available too.
All right, Vincent. Well, thank you again, and take care of yourself. And like I said, keep in touch.
Of course, Kevin. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. It was my pleasure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this week. Actually, that's going to do it for the season. We're done. So, again, thank you all for joining us. If you did not catch the film, we watched Never Hike Alone, the Ghost Cut. Check that out on YouTube. It's under Womp Stomp Films. Excellent film. So, yeah, and again, thank you to Vincent DeSanti, the director, and he played a lot of scenes of Jason in this film. So check it out. If you didn't catch it tonight, go check it out and follow him. Keep an eye on him and see what he comes up with next. Until next season, stay safe. Happy Halloween, everybody, and stay spooky.